obviously, before we get started with football talk, we have to talk barbecue. And I am curious if there's anything that you've been smoking, grilling lately that you need to brag about.
I haven't gotten a whole lot of opportunity to do a whole lot of smoking this summer. I was on vacation last week in the Outer Banks, and I grilled, I think, 4 of the 5 nights I was there. Did burgers, stuffed burgers. One week it was stuffed with mozzarella and bacon. Then London broil another night. And then it was chicken, just boneless, skinless chicken that I had marinated. And then, the hot dogs and burgers again. So I haven't gotten a whole lot of time. I did do some ribs earlier this early, I guess it was late spring. But my weekends have been tied up so much with travel baseball, so I haven't gotten the chance to smoke. I was like, man, the summer is racing away,
Well, it's funny because I haven't used my smoker in a couple of weeks. I'm like, why haven't I been? Because we've been either out of town or like the weekend, it just hasn't worked out. Or like there's always been something for several weeks. We're at a wedding, we're at a lake house, we're at this, we're at that. It's just me and my wife and I. And so sometimes when it's that small a number, like, well, maybe we won't do anything now. So it's been, but I've grilled a lot, and I actually used a cedar plank with the salmon a couple weeks ago, which was pretty good. It was different. So that was pretty good. But otherwise, like I need to get back, and pizza. I do the homemade grilled pizza.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
But I'm doing the homemade dough now too, though.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to go next level.
Yeah, I haven't done that in a while. Since you first told me, I did wind up doing it that summer that you told me about it, and I haven't since. That's a good idea. That's something I got to get back to as well.
It's the kids love it, and I like it. So anyways, so let's get to Washington. So part of the reason I wanted to have you on, you're good, but also because you covered this franchise, and you were here when there were expectations for a season. Now you're on the outside with this franchise having expectations. How do you view where they're at right now?
I still think they're building. I don't in any way see them as next level contenders. I mean, look, they won their division. It was a weird year. It was a down year for everybody. But they eked it out. And that's great. That's positive. They have something to build on. But I still have real questions about their quarterback position because, Ryan Fitzpatrick can look great for 5 games and then turn into a pumpkin. And, is he going to bounce back? Is that going to happen again? Do they turn to Taylor Heineke after he struggles for a while? I don't know. So, retooling that offensive line is, raises more questions for me. And so I don't know. I think that Dallas is going to be improved. Eagles, we don't know about. The Giants, you think maybe they'd be improved. I think Washington will be in the thick of things, but I don't see them as favorites. I don't see them as a team that looks like they're ready to go on a deep playoff run. Again, they'll be competitive when you got that defense, and they've added to their offensive weapons, but I still have questions about them.
Do you see this building project differently than maybe some of the others? Because we both cover teams where they felt like they went into a season feeling good, and then it would go south, or it wouldn't quite go to where they thought it would. Do you view this differently at all?
I do sense that, and maybe it's a good thing. There's no buzz. Like, you remember that we would have like one promising year, then there was this huge expectation from the fan base or from the team. I feel like this is more of a gradual, maybe more of a natural progression type of thing. I think I would feel better if they had drafted a quarterback so you knew, okay, you got Fitzpatrick for this year and you're grooming a guy behind him, and so you could tell where this thing was going. It kind of almost feels like another placeholder year at quarterback. But again, I guess you're setting the table right now, so then you get that kid. And again, their defense is really good. They've added pieces on offense, but I guess unlike, after that first RG3 season, we thought, okay, hey, this team's going to be good for a long time, and the bottom fell out. Or maybe the Gruden playoff win season, you thought, okay, hey, they're going to build on this thing, the bottom fell out. I just feel like this is gradual steps forward. Everything around Fitzpatrick on offense, as far as like the wide receiver position, has improved. The running backs are more experienced, so they should help. The defense, the back end, a little maybe some questions about for me, but I just feel like naturally they're taking steps forward. No big jump and no, unreasonable expectations, but just it's a process. And I think we're seeing that process unfold rather than expecting some overnight magical transformation.
And I think, it's funny because that's a great point, because in the past, after RG3's first year, I mean, I think one of our colleagues predicted a Super Bowl run. Now, I will say this. I didn't exactly predict a 3-13 year either. I think I had them winning probably 10 games and getting to the NFC Championship, something like that. I expected a playoff run as well. I think a lot of people did, right?
Right.
I mean, you know how internally people are talking. I remember seeing a guy after the Cowboys game who's like, that guy's going to get a lot of people paid. So the expectations were huge. And after Kirk's play, the 15-year, the expectations were to build on that. So you're right. I think I think what seems to have people, the fans, excited here isn't so much like, hey, what are they going to do this year, as much as they're actually building it maybe the right way for the first time in a long time. Yeah,
exactly. And again, I see, they've got that young core, that front seven there. I like what they've done there. My real big question is quarterback. And what about you? I mean, do you see, is it as big a question for you about quarterback and the fact that, there's an expiration date on Fitzpatrick and no clear successor? That's why I'm kind of like, I have this uneasiness about it, but maybe
I'm with you on that, because I think I think there's a definite ceiling with what they have here. And so I think that's going to hold them back this year. I think that's where the building process comes into play, because I think one of the differences in the past, they always seem to think, as they always felt they were close. They were like the rear view mirror. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. They felt like they were closer to a title than they were. I think what I like about this time so far is that they didn't go out and make an over-aggressive play for a quarterback. Now, you could have drafted one, but they didn't make the over-aggressive play, giving up too much capital. They opted to, you don't like the guy, let's keep building, and then go get the guy. And so I think that's the part I like. Now, we don't know if that's going to work. Right. But so I do have the same questions at quarterback. Like, we know who's going to be the guy this year. It'll be Fitzpatrick. And then if he fails, and Heineke or Kyle Allen come in, and they felt like they can get through the year with this group, with what's around them. But to win in the future, you're going to have to improve. So I'm still with you there, but I like that it may be that when they have that guy next year, they're being plugged into a better situation than they've had in a long time. So that's where it's a short-term, long-term view. Short-term, quarterback's still a question. Long-term, the way they're building may end up to be more fruitful for them. That's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. They do have Kyle Allen and Heineke. So maybe if it's not Fitzpatrick, they do have somebody that they can turn to so that
get through this year.
And I mean, unless you hope that they're not drafting in the top 10 next year.
Right.
So that means that quarterback might need a little bit of time, And
the part of my thinking too, Mike, has been, and what I've gathered throughout the offseason is when they looked at the Rams, the 49ers, their aggressive plays for quarterbacks, that they felt like those franchises were in a closer position to give up that capital. They could afford to give up that capital because the roster they had around that guy. And the Chiefs, with Andy Reid, who was a close friend of Ron Rivera's, when they went out and got Mahomes, that they were in position, they had the roster built around that position. So that's why I think like this offseason, what I thought might happen this offseason was they'd get a little bit more draft capital for next year to make that aggressive play to go get a guy. But I still think there are ways they can do that. But I think that's why I say I think if they win 10 games with this quarterback crew, and the quarterback play is just okay, but around them looks pretty good, I think they'll go make an aggressive play for a guy. So I think like that, that's why I say the difference seems to me in this time is that they're taking a longer view of this. I think, than again with and back in RG3 second year, they had that cap penalty. They really couldn't do a whole lot, and the defense absolutely needed improving. Yeah. And after Kurt's year, like you remember how how close they felt like they were.
Yeah, and
so. I think that, so I don't know. That's why I wondered from from where your vantage point is, I wondered how you viewed that, because you were here and you saw it, and now you're on the outside and you're seeing it from a different lens. And that's why I wondered if it was different for you this time.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like that, again, they'll be in the thick of things. They'll have some really good outings, and they'll have some, questionable outings. I still think that they're maybe a year, maybe two away from being legit, contenders until they get that quarterback position solved. So no, I don't think that they're, Super Bowl contenders this year. I don't, unless they go out in free agency next year and get some really awesome quarterback or make a trade or something like that. I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders next year. But again, that's
I think that's right. I think we'll see, but I do think that's going to be the question hanging over them. But it's been explained, or at least heard that they want, if you can't get that guy, keep building until you do get him. Right. What do you hear about Taylor Heineke from people on the outside? And I know what I hear from people around the league. What do you hear?
That I mean, as far as a competitor, he got a lot of respect last year. He did some nice things. The thing is that he's small, and durability are the big question marks there. People around the league definitely are like, wow, that kid looks like he could play. Now, the other team didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for him, right. But he himself didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for them either.
He was in a classroom a month earlier.
Right. But, I think that the real question is just durability, because he's had a limited amount of games where he's finished healthy, throughout his career. But he's a guy that it's good to have on your roster. He's a good guy to be able to plug in here and there. And say Fitzpatrick is struggling, maybe you plug him in, you have a couple good weeks, and Fitzpatrick gets his mind right again, and you go back to him. But I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that they see him as the future. But just that, like, hey, that guy's got something there, and he's a good guy to have in your organization.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was talking to somebody else with another team, and they said, I said, why was this guy out of the league for 2 years? If he went out and did this, why was he out of the league? He said, well, part of it was in a workout setting, you're not going to see all that the kid has to offer.
Right.
And, he didn't have the greatest of film before. Okay, whatever. But in a workout setting, you're going to take the guy who's got the bigger arm, the faster, bigger, whatever. Said now the difference is now if he became free, somebody else is going to pick him up, because now you saw him in a game and you saw a different side of him.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that really makes a difference for quarterbacks is their ability to improvise when things break down. And so if you're in a workout or just a practice, a controlled environment, you're going to only see so much of him. But he demonstrated a real fire, competitive fire. He demonstrated escapability, ability to make something out of nothing. And so that helps. And again, if you have a guy, say Fitzpatrick got hurt and you had to plug him into a game, he's a perfect guy for that, because, he'll know the offense, but he also can go off script and help you, and the team won't have a lot of preparation for him. But is he a guy you can really build around because of his lack of size and the durability issues? That's the real question there.
What's your trust level in Fitzpatrick?
I mean,
you don't have to say more. I think we just
again, he'll be good for 4 or 5 games, and then he's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick and start throwing a lot of interceptions, and you're just they're going to be some real maddening performances. Everywhere he's been, the bottom always drops out. After a month or maybe 6 games. Now he did provide sparks late in the year when they went back to him in Miami, but again, I mean, and he's a year older now too. I mean, I know he says he's playing his best football right now, but you kind of are who you are at this.
Well, I think in 16, can you play that like there? He hasn't. Can you do that over 16, 17 games? That's the question that I have with him. You brought the NFC East a little bit earlier. When you look at it, how do you see Dallas at this point?
Now their defense, I still have questions about. Now they drafted, a number of defensive players, but offensively, I think they'll be better. I thought, I know that even with Dak, he was putting up big numbers and they were losing games, but I think that this coaching staff, they had Russ to knock off. And I think maybe they overestimated themselves, thinking they had it figured out. Mike McCarthy, he was supposedly studying and prepping and everything like that. But, being away from the game, you still, there's some catching up to do. But I think Dak is going to be very motivated. They've got good pieces around him, as far as weapon goes. Offensive line, maybe a little questions here and there. But I think that they're going to bounce back. And the way that they finished the season, even, with Andy Dalton, I think showed that they were starting to figure things out. Now they've got a new defense coordinator. Dan Quinn is going to come in there. I think that he will get more out of that unit than what they were getting. So I looking at all those teams, I think they're the favorite to win the NFC East. Okay.
And you're assuming there that Dak is going to be back to being Dak again.
Yeah, and he's close right now. He has said that if he had to go play a game, that he would be able to do that. And I think they'll still be cautious throughout training camp and kind of hold him back a little bit. But he got paid, but he feels like he's not a guy who's going to be like, oh, I got paid, I'm good now. He got paid, and he wants to prove I'm worth it. This is why they paid me. And coming off that injury, he's super motivated. He wants to be a difference maker there. So I think that he's going to be fine. I just feel like when you look at the teams out there, I just have real questions. You got a first-year head coach in Philly. I don't know Jalen Hurts. There are questions about him. They're aging on defense. Their wide receiver core, they really always, for some reason continue to struggle to find talent there at that position. And then the Giants, healthy Saquon Barkley should help Daniel Jones, but I'm not really sold yet on Daniel Jones either.
Yeah, I'm not either.
So that's why I look at him and I'm like, well, okay, Washington will be in the thick of things, but Dak might be the difference maker when it comes down between Dak and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Right. And, it's funny because with Daniel Jones, he's beaten this franchise a few times.
Yeah.
And I think Washington fans probably might have a different view of him compared to everybody else because he always seems to play well against this team, which is really odd. I don't what would be what's holding you back on him? And also their offensive line, did they do enough there? Because I think they add obviously Galladay and then Kadarius Toney, but did they do anything on the line that, what's your confidence level on their line?
I have questions about that as well. And he fumbles the ball a lot. Yeah. Consistency is a big issue with him. Again, he looks great against Washington, but as a whole, he's very inconsistent. He's got to do a better job of taking care of the ball. And then you just wonder, okay, the protection, is he going to be protected enough so he can actually work through progressions and things like that? Again, there are times when you think, oh, maybe so. And then there are times when you look at him and just like, this guy still just hasn't got it. Now you're going into year 3. But last year, he was learning a new offense. So he'll have some continuity this year of going from, year 2 in an offense. That might help him. Again, being able to run the football should ease some pressure on him. But I think they're far away.
It depends on when Barkley comes back, too, because, I don't think we know if he's going to be there when it opens.
And you don't know if he's going to be just like himself or it's going to take a little while. Because, sometimes, guys will say it's not till a year after they come back that they start feeling that way. So I don't know. I'm not scared of the Giants if I'm a Washington fan. I think that the team that you're looking at is really Dallas, even though that Dallas, was very disappointing last year, but they have continuity. They have, the quarterback who's been there his future is now, no longer in doubt. He can play freely. And just there's just so many questions in Philly. So that I think Washington and Dallas are the two teams that are going to be going, back and forth for that division.
And then the Wall Street Journal came out with a story with talking to Dan Snyder. I guess they named Tanya Snyder co-CEO, which has been something that has been an unofficial designation for about the past year. What did you make of that article and anything with that?
I mean, it's not entirely surprising because of the fact that anytime in the last year or so that you hear people talk about them, or whenever they send out press releases, even, it's always, Dan and Tanya Snyder, Jason Wright, always make sure he mentions her. So it seemed like they were more involved, more joined at the hip, her being more involved and things like that. Will it make a whole difference? I don't know. I'm a couple people I check with in the organization. They're like, well, it definitely, it looks better. You've got, her on board with him, and they pointed to kind of how Buffalo and the Browns, they always are talking to the husband and wife team of those teams like that. But I don't know that this is something that's going to significantly change the way Washington goes about business.
Do you wonder about anything with the timing of the article? I mean, there's still that investigation. We still haven't seen the results of that yet. Is there any dots to connect? Or is anything there, or is that just too far-fetched?
Well, I mean, you just never know with this team. But I did, whenever they announce something, and it always seems to come, they give it to to the Wall Street Journal, and then something happens. So I did say, okay, well, what shoe's about to drop? But I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't either.
To suggest like, oh, this is coming. But they never just make announcements just to, make announcements. There's always, I think it was last year when they announced that they were changing the name of the street to Joe Gibbs Way or something like that. And it was still trying to get ahead of, negative publicity. So if something happened, I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, I haven't heard from anybody that anything is brewing just right now.
And I haven't either. I am supposed to be on vacation, so I'm not supposed to be hearing anything. So, I'm trying to see if I can get through this summer with getting some actual time off. So, Mike, let's talk about your podcast real quick. Tell people where they can get it, what your plans are for the season. And also, I think they need to go back and check out, was it Freddie Stevenson you had on recently?
Yeah, I had him on. And, that was a different kind of story because,
right.
He is a guy who, former Florida State fullback, got a shot in the NFL. He grew up in poverty. His dad was incarcerated. His mom trying to take care of the 5 children, very, very poor. And he promised his mom, I'm going to make it to the NFL. And he winds up getting a standout spot in high school, scholarship to college, goes undrafted, gets to the NFL, and it doesn't quite work out. And so he talks about kind of how he had to reset things in his life because he started going down a wrong path. And so it wasn't the Hollywood or Disney type of, oh, yeah, I made it to the NFL, take care of my mom, change their lives. But he's also finding a way to use his struggles to change the lives of young people. So that was one of my most recent podcast episodes. And then the same week, this is week before last, have Mike Tannenbaum, former Jets GM, who, I get asked a lot by some young kids, like, how do I become a GM, or how do I get a job in the NFL? And so Mike talked about his career path and gave some real good guidance on, if you want a career in the NFL, this is the majors. These are the majors you should consider. These are the path choices, and this is the work ethic you have to develop. So that was really good. I'm going to have Aaron Jones and his brother Alvin Jones, the Packers running back, and Alvin Jones had a little cup of coffee with the Ravens. Going to have them on talking about some stuff they're doing for military. They're both military brats, and what they're doing to try to make a difference for young people in the country. That's coming up this week. But yeah, the season will be here before you know it. My training camp tour. I'm putting the final touches on the planning there, but it looks like I'm going to be bouncing from Green Bay to Kansas City to the Raiders to the Rams, the 49ers, the Chargers. So there's going to be, we're going to be back in front of reporters. I mean, players and coaches, it looks like. So have, podcast episodes of that, looking at 2 podcasts a week. So, on the Empire Media Network here, sister, a parent company for us. And you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube as well.
And it's always, and people have to realize you always get good guests, and that's what it is. It's also your insight too that you're offering in that other one. But I will say, after the Freddie Stevenson one, my son, who's doing video stuff for Empire, he texts me. He's like, "You've got to listen to this. This is the best thing I've heard in a long time."
Wow.
So I'm like, and he listens to my podcast. So he's like, but I don't blame him, because that was a really good one. But my point is, he was really excited after hearing that, and he's like, "You've got to listen to this. It's great." So for people out there, it doesn't have to pertain to Washington for it to be interesting or good, and that's one thing.
And that's the thing is, like, the NFL is so full of stories, and these are fascinating people, and that's one thing I like about this job, and I know you do too, is that you always learn something. And so it doesn't matter who I talk to, what team they're from, I'm always learning something, and shedding some light. And look, if you are a Washington fan, you have all the days to listen to the John Keim report, and then after you listen to his, maybe when you're driving back home, you need something else to listen to, So,
well, and I would say, there you go. And,
all those podcasts on the network that you can, there's 7 days a week, and there's podcasts for every day.
Well, listen, people be driving back to work. You're going to need something, right? So, and my training camp stuff will be a lot of 10-minute daily updates with a longer one maybe at the end of the week. But just because you want daily updates, that means you have time for Mike's podcast. So there you go.
There we go.
There you go. Mike, awesome stuff. Thanks a lot for coming on.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. I'll be talking to you.
All right.